This is Property Influencers, where we talk to some of the leading figures in the retail real estate market.
Thank you very much for attending and agreeing to answer some of my questions. I thought I'd start with a sort of wide open one. What are your primary objectives at MIPIM Asia this year, would you say?
Primarily to speak to clients about China's outlook.
Yep.
Particularly over the medium and the long term, and what are the risks to their investments?
And in the sort of wider world, what do you think the current global economic conditions will have on the Asian property markets over the coming year, say?
Certainly there's reason for concern, but at the same time this is a region with high savings rates. It's benefiting from policy easing in the rest of the world. We're seeing capital come to this part of the world to capture high growth rates, and so that seems to be sustaining property prices. That said, the region won't escape another global recession, so we do see risks of a correction, but not a serious correction. Fundamentals are strong.
And over the slightly longer term, say over the next 5 to 10 years, where do you see the key trends emerging?
Urbanization is the major trend. We're seeing a huge influx of people into cities. It was traditionally China, but we're now seeing the trend of spread out into countries such as India, Indonesia, to Pakistan. So really it is about construction of new residential apartments, particularly public housing, but also the infrastructure that supports larger cities, from schools to subways to sewers. China accounts for almost half the region's total economy, so it plays a major role as a growth engine. I think China faces some challenges over the next 5 years, particularly related to inflation and the imbalances that have developed, but nonetheless, growth, even if it slows, will still remain above the 5% level, and over the 10-year horizon, it should return to around about 8%.
And what place do you think sustainable development has in this vision and in the future for countries like China?
Sustainable development is crucial. What is clear that while urbanization will be a powerful trend, we cannot repeat the same types of urbanization that we've seen over the last 50 years. It has to be more environmentally friendly to deal with what are growing resource constraints, particularly in this region, so that the cities of the future in this part of the world will have to look very different to the cities of the developed countries that we're so familiar with over the last 50 years. In
what particular aspects? Are you talking about transport?
It could be transport. It could be simply the way they consume water, for instance. It could be the way they dispose of their garbage. We have to see some radical transformations in order to sustain the growth of these cities in those areas.
Are you optimistic about that scenario?
I certainly have hopes, particularly in China. A lot of money and attention is being paid to these problems because there is a recognition that they are serious problems. That said, China is somewhat exceptional relative to the rest of the region, particularly India, Indonesia, Pakistan, and China itself is not perfect.
Where do you think the other key areas of growth in terms of countries in this sort of region are emerging?
North Asia is clearly a major growth engine for the rest of the region, so the Koreas, the Hong Kongs are very important. So is India, the region's other large economy. It seems to be investing more, spending less, which is a much better mix in terms of its growth than was the case over the last 10 years. We're also clearly somewhat optimistic about Indonesia. Very large population, great potential. That said, there needs to be more serious effort paid to reforms, particularly labour market reforms.
And which real estate sectors would you say are showing the most innovation across Asia as a region?
I think centres that are intermediaries for trade, for goods, for people, tend to be more open to new ideas. So I do think we've seen innovation there. At the same time, China is showing a surprising amount of innovation. Clearly not all parts of the sector, but certainly there are certain segments where there's a growing recognition that and acceptance of foreign innovation and dealing with challenges, particularly those related to environmental sustainability.
Okay, well, thanks very much.
Thank you.